You know, when you've served long enough in the Army, you kind of start thinking you've seen it all. Loss, betrayal, pain, brotherhood, all of it. But life's got a funny way of hitting you where you least expect it. My name's Bob Matthews, 58 years old. Retired from the United States Army after 34 long years of service. I've seen men cry in silence. I've carried brothers home in flag-draped coffins, and I've stood proud under that same flag more times than I can count. But what I wasn't prepared for was coming home. See, the battlefield's got rules. Back home, it's a whole different war. When I retired, I moved back to my little town in Texas. Small place. You could walk the main street in 10 minutes flat. Old diner on the corner, gas station that still plays country songs from the 90s, and neighbors who wave whether they know you or not. That's the kind of peace I was looking for. And for a while, I had it. Just me, my small house, my morning coffee, and my daughter, Emily. She was my world, man. Only child. Her mom passed when she was 12. Cancer took her quick. I raised her the best I could, Army-style discipline, but with all the love I had. Every decision I made, every dollar I saved, was for her future. She was smart, beautiful, and had her mama's smile, the kind that could melt through any kind of pain. She used to joke that I'd never let her grow up, said I still called her kiddo even when she turned 24. Guess she was right. To me, she'd always be my little girl. Then came Derek. He showed up around the time she started working at the local coffee shop. Nice smile, neat haircut, said he was doing some kind of small business thing online. I didn't pay much attention at first. She'd come home talking about him, laughing in that carefree way that reminded me of her mom, and hell, I thought maybe the kid's good for her. He was polite, too polite actually. Always said sir and thank you, offered to mow my lawn, even brought me a bottle of whiskey once. Real charming. But something in his eyes didn't sit right. Can't explain it, but in the Army, you learn to read people fast. You can tell when someone's hiding something. That boy had the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But Emily loved him. And when your daughter looks you in the eye and says, "Dad, he makes me happy," well, you push your doubts aside. I figured maybe I was just being an overprotective old soldier. So I let him be. I gave him space. Hell, I even invited him over for dinner a few times. Ribs on the grill, football on TV, beer on the table. He played the perfect gentleman. Asked me stories about my time in Iraq, laughed at my old jokes, even saluted me once when he was drunk. And I remember thinking, maybe I misjudged him. Maybe this kid's all right. But that's the thing about life. Sometimes the people who call you sir are the ones digging a hole right under your feet. I'd been retired about 2 years when things started feeling different. Emily became distant. She stopped eating dinner with me, stopped talking about her day. When I asked, she'd just say she was tired from work. And Derek, he was always around. Too much, actually. I'd come home from a walk and find him sitting on my porch, smoking like he owned the place. Once, I even caught him going through my mail. He said he was just grabbing it for me. But my gut, my soldier's gut, told me there was more to it. You ever get that feeling in your bones that something bad's coming? Yeah, I had that. Couldn't sleep right, couldn't eat. My house, my safe place, started feeling like enemy territory. And yet, I told myself, Bob, maybe you're just lonely. Maybe you're imagining things. I didn't want to believe my daughter, my only family, would bring trouble into my home. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. You know what's funny? I spent half my life learning how to read a battlefield, and the other half trying to forget it. But no one teaches you how to fight when the war's in your own house. Hey, before I keep going, if you're still listening this far, I guess you're the kind of person who likes stories that hit a little too close to home. So do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button for TaleBoxUS. Not for me, but for the folks out there who've lived through something like this. 'Cause what I'm about to tell you, it ain't easy to hear. One night, I walked into my house and saw Derek sitting at my desk. Laptop open. My papers spread out. Pension details, bank info, even my will. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, he froze. And that's when I realized the war I'd been ignoring all this time had already started. I remember that night like it was yesterday. The air outside was thick with rain, the kind of sticky heat that just won't quit. Typical Texas evening. I'd gone out for a walk, trying to clear my head. When I came back, the lights were still on, even though Emily had said she was heading to bed early. I pushed open the door, and there he was, Derek, sitting in my chair, at my desk, with my damn laptop open and a pile of my papers spread out like a tactical map before a mission. For a second, I froze. Years of Army discipline kicked in. You don't react right away. You observe. He didn't hear me come in. He was too busy taking pictures with his phone of my bank documents, pension account, life insurance, even the deed to my house. That's when my stomach turned cold. Not 'cause of the money. Hell, I'd been broke half my life. But because every piece of paper on that desk had my daughter's name attached somewhere. So I said, real quiet, "Son, mind telling me what you're doing at my desk?" He jumped like a spooked deer. Phone nearly fell out of his hand. Started babbling something about helping Emily sort paperwork for my insurance or some crap like that. But I wasn't buying it. I'd seen that face before, in interrogation rooms overseas, in men who swore they were innocent with blood on their boots. He had that same look, panic trying to hide behind charm. He stood up too quick, tried to act casual, but his pupils were wide, like he'd just been caught in the middle of a heist. I didn't yell, didn't throw him out, didn't pull rank or wave my service pistol. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, "Tell Emily I want to talk in the morning." Then I walked out. Didn't sleep a damn wink that night. My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. The mail, the sudden visits, the weird bank calls I'd been ignoring, it all started adding up. When you've seen betrayal in the field, you learn to feel it. It's got a smell, a rhythm, and I could smell it in my own home. Next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee in one hand, her favorite pancakes on the stove. When Emily came down, she looked tired, nervous. Derek wasn't with her. I asked her straight, no anger, no tears. "Emily, why was he going through my papers last night?" She froze, didn't even try to fake surprise. And that silence was louder than any explosion I'd heard in my life. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. She said, "Dad, you don't understand. Derek's been struggling. He just needed to know if maybe we could help him start a business." I just stared at her. Couldn't believe what I was hearing. Help him? With my retirement savings? The money I bled 34 years for? I said, real low, "Honey, helpin's one thing, but lying? That's a whole different battlefield." She broke down then, crying, said she didn't mean to, that she loved him, that they were gonna pay me back once things got better. I wanted to believe her. God knows I did. But that gut feeling wouldn't quit. And then the first transfer alert came in, right there on my phone. $2,000 gone. Then another. Then 5. She'd already started moving my funds, under my name. It felt like a bullet straight to the chest. Not the kind that kills you right away, but the one that keeps burning long after it hits. I didn't say a word, just walked out of that kitchen, out of my house, and drove. No destination, just needed to breathe. Ended up parked by the old Veterans Memorial near the edge of town. Sat there for hours, staring at those names carved in stone. Guys who never made it home. And I thought to myself, I fought wars with brothers who'd die for me, and now I'm losing a war to my own blood. That night, I made a plan, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. You don't get to play a soldier and not learn strategy. For the next week, I acted normal. Didn't confront him, didn't show my cards. I laughed at dinner, watched TV, even helped Derek fix his damn truck. Meanwhile, I called a buddy from my old unit, Ray, who now worked in cybersecurity. Told him everything. He helped me trace the transfers. Turns out, Derek had set up an offshore account under Emily's name, probably to make it look like she was the one doing it if things went south. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not from anger, but heartbreak. That boy wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing my daughter's soul. I remember standing at her door that night, staring at the light under it, hearing her laugh on the phone with him. Used to love that sound. Now it cut through me like a knife. I wanted to bust that door open, yell, throw 'em both out. But instead, I walked away. A soldier doesn't strike without knowing the enemy's next move. So I waited, watched, collected proof. Every late-night call, every transaction, every whisper that stopped when I entered the room. And then came the day they tried to finish it. Sell the house. My damn house. That's when I knew. The war had officially begun. You can hurt a soldier. You can take his money, his medals, even his pride. But once you make him realize the war's personal, you better be ready for what comes next. When I decided to act, I didn't do it out of spite. I did it out of principle. Out of the idea that there are lines you don't cross. And if someone drags your family over that line, you do what you must to put things right. See, the Army teaches you 2 things real good: patience and planning. You don't rush a mission. You gather intel. You wait for the opportune moment. You make sure when you move, it counts. So, that's what I did. First move, protect what I had left. I called the bank. Not just any call. I called in with my veteran ID, asked to freeze transfers, requested new account numbers, and put a watch on my pension disbursements. The bank manager, bless her soul, was gentle but firm. She put blocks in place that would require my direct voice to authorize anything. That bought me time. Then I did something folks don't expect from an old soldier. I used modern help. Called up Ray, my old unit brother who'd moved into cyber work. He's the kind of guy who speaks in code and hates liars. I told him everything. Every transfer, every odd email, every late-night visit Derek made. Ray listened, then said 3 words I needed to hear. We'll build proof. He started digging into the little breadcrumbs Derek had left behind. Transaction trails, IP addresses from where transfers came, phone numbers, the whole damn thing. And you know the thing about folks who think they're slick? They leave a map if you know how to read it. While Ray worked the digital side, I handled the human. I started acting like nothing was wrong. I made pancakes on Sunday mornings. I asked Emily about her day. I let Derek think he'd won me over. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to a con artist is show him mercy. It makes him careless. One evening, Derek invited me to the bar where he claimed he ran a consulting gig. Said he wanted to celebrate a new contract. I went, not because I trusted him, but because I wanted to see how he moved when he thought other people were watching. Guy drank like it was his job, talked loud about risks and rewards, bragged a little too much about knowing how to handle paperwork, even joked about how easy names could be moved around if you knew the right people. He laughed, and the laugh didn't reach his eyes. Turns out that laugh was a confession in disguise. Ray found the first piece of hard proof 2 days later. Derek had wired funds to an account registered under a shell company, the sort of shady setup you'd see on documentaries. Ray traced that account back to a wallet Derek shared with a man in another county. The transfers were clumsy, lots of little deposits to avoid red flags, but they added up. He'd even used my daughter's email as a secondary contact, thinking that would hide him. Ray sent me screenshots. He underlined the transfers and wrote, "This is theft, Bob. Federal jurisdiction might bite, depending on amounts. You got enough to move." I got angry, sure, but anger ain't a weapon. It's a distraction. I kept to the plan. Next, I needed to know how deep Emily was in. Was she a co-conspirator, or was she someone falling for a man with a bad moral compass? The line between victim and accomplice can be thin, and sometimes it's crossed without anyone noticing. So I started leaving little things around. Fake notes, a checkbook left out, an envelope with a business proposal printed, which actually contained blank pages. I watched how she reacted. If she'd been directly helping, she might try to hide it or burn the paper. If she was unaware, she'd be confused and probably defensive for Derek. She chose confused. She cried, of course, and asked what was going on. I told her a half-truth, that I'd been having bank issues, and asked if she knew anything. That got her talking. She spilled about Derek's worries, his pride, his promises to make things right. The way she said his name, it was still love, but shaded by guilt, not the cold steel of someone making plans. That didn't clear her, but it told me 2 things. She was blind with love, and Derek had blurred ethics into promises. Then came the hardest part, making sure the law could take its bite. We could have gone guns blazing, but the sort of justice I wanted couldn't be about spectacle. It had to be incontrovertible. Facts, records, witnesses, a narrative the DA couldn't ignore. I sat down with an old friend, Sheriff Tom. Tom had been county sheriff for as long as we'd lived here. He owed me favors, sure, and I owed him my trust. I walked into his office and laid everything on the table. I didn't dramatize. I gave him dates, transactions, phone numbers. I gave him the screenshots Ray had pulled and a timeline I'd kept in a notebook. Receipts, bank alerts, the nights Derek showed up uninvited. Tom didn't smile. He knew the pain of betrayal. This town was small, but secrets were large. He told me he'd look into it, quietly. He said the sheriff's office would coordinate with federal agents if it crossed thresholds, but we could start locally. We needed a trap, and the trap had to be clean. So we set the bait. I told Emily that I'd be updating some paperwork and that I needed her help at the bank the next morning to sign a power of attorney form, a harmless-sounding paper that would let me consolidate things. I told her to bring Derek. I wanted him to meet the banker. I wanted him in the room when we moved. What I'd actually done was file a partial freeze and have the bank agree to a controlled withdrawal, one that would only go through if signed by someone matching Derek's ID and a code Ray had prepared. The bank would alert us if there was any attempt to move funds without proper authorization. When Derek showed up, he was smug. He thought he'd beat the system. I played the part of the grandfatherly dad, you know? Open arms, a little joke about the coffee, the old man's hearing getting worse. The banker asked for ID. Derek fumbled. He tried to hand over an old license with mismatched details. The bank agent's face changed. She coyly excused herself to the back. The sheriff sat at the corner of the room. The plan was in motion. Derek realized something was wrong. You could see it in the way his jaw tightened. He tried to back out, tried to charm, tried to threaten. He swore, he lied, but this time there were witnesses. Tom's deputies were outside the door. They walked him out in cuffs. He screamed. He called Emily a liar. He called me every name he could find. I stood there, socketed to my chair like a monument, feeling the old adrenaline in my veins, but not letting it loose. He was charged with felony theft by deception and identity fraud. They took his phone, his watch, a little leather-bound notebook with numbers and names. In the station, I watched him and felt a complicated storm. There was a kind of human pity, briefly, a flash of the kid he might have been if life had been kinder. And then the cold reality set back in. Emily fainted in the parking lot. That image, her on the hard asphalt with the rainwater making her face a smear of mascara and tears, is one I'll carry forever. Her grief was a sound like a hawk calling in the night. People clustered around, neighbors whispering, cameras flashing from folks who'd seen it all. She screamed Derek's name like a prayer and a curse. I wanted to run to her, to pick her up and tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't. This was part of the operation. And there are wounds a father can't fix with a bandage. Sheriff Tom let me make one move before the deputies took Derek to the county lockup. I walked up to Emily, kneeled, and put my hand on her shoulder. "Em," I said, my voice soft as a battlefield prayer, "I'm gonna get you through this, but you gotta tell the truth." She clung to me like a drowning thing. She said the words she'd been saving, that she didn't know the scale, that she'd signed papers thinking they were about a loan, that she'd trusted him. She begged me to believe her. She said she loved him. I heard everything. I believed some of it. My heart wanted to pick the parts that made her innocent, but my mind had seen the transactions, the accounts, the shell company. My hope and my proof were in different places. They booked Derek that night. He raged, screamed, promised he'd take care of things, said he'd make me pay. I didn't flinch. I folded my hands and listened, because sometimes the quietest men make the worst noise when they have nothing left. The DA asked for time. Federal investigators made a courtesy call, which meant the paper trail was big enough to get federal eyes on it. Evidence stacked up like bricks. Ray kept sending updates, phone pings, transfer timestamps, the offshore accountant that tried to launder the money through a shell in another state. Each piece tightened the noose. But this ain't one of those stories where a single arrest is the end. The bigger the net, the more players could show up. I had to protect Emily from becoming collateral. I signed the paperwork to temporarily place her assets under a protective trustee while the case moved forward, so she couldn't be pressured or used as a pawn in any desperate schemes. Days passed. Derek sat in a cell and tried to hawk his charm through bars. He made calls, left messages, begged friends to help move things and clear it up. Friends who once lent him tools now avoided his calls. Pride is a fragile thing when backed into a corner. It becomes ugly and loud. Emily came by the station to give a statement. She cried through it. I held her hand during breaks. She told the detectives everything she could remember, about the conversations, about Derek's promises, about nights he came home drunk and swollen with worry. She gave them that little leather notebook he'd kept, the one with names and numbers and amounts. In the margins were scribbled notes. Move 2K tonight. Check 45 wire. That notebook sealed a lot. Eventually, the DA filed formal charges. The paperwork read like a bad novel. Multiple counts of theft by deception, identity fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, the works. Derek's face on the indictment looked small. He'd been a big man in his head, but on paper, he became a collection of accounts and ledgers. There's a peculiar quiet in victory when it's not entirely yours. I didn't jump for joy when Derek was indicted. I felt relieved, yes, like a soldier who'd won a skirmish. But I also felt hollow. The war wasn't over. The real fight, the one with court dates and testimony and judges and juries, was ahead. That night, after Emily finally fell asleep on the couch, I sat in the kitchen and thought about forgiveness. People always ask me, "Are you gonna forgive her?" They mean Emily. Sometimes I think they want a sound bite, something clean and neat. But forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a thing you build, if it even gets built at all. I spoke to her then, voice low, not loud enough to wake her. "Em," I said, "I did what I had to do, not for my pride, but so you'd see the truth. I want you to be safe. I want you to learn from this without losing yourself." She woke, wrapped her arms around me like a child seeking shelter, and I held her. For a moment, it felt like the old days. But I knew, once the court came and the papers were signed and the final gavel fell, things would be different. People change, some for the better, some for the worse. Some changes are permanent. Weeks turned into months. The legal process dragged like a storm front. Evidence was hammered out in deposition rooms, attorneys filed motions, and Derek's defense tried to weave a narrative where he was the victim of circumstance. He painted himself as an entrepreneur, a man trying to survive. The truth is, lies have better stories than facts sometimes. Emily testified. She told the jury about love and promises, about naivety and pressure, about late-night threats Derek had made after he realized the net was closing. She said she'd been ashamed. She said she'd been scared. She cried in front of 10 strangers and told them she'd been a fool. Hearing her on that stand nearly broke me. But it also made me proud. Not proud in the way winners are proud, but proud that my girl had the courage to face what she'd been part of and to tell the truth when it mattered. The trial moved fast after that. Witnesses testified to the transfers, to Derek's patterns of borrowing and failing to repay, to the web of accounts he'd tried to hide behind. Ray testified as a technical expert and explained the digital breadcrumbs Derek had left. I listened to all of it, and sometimes, when my throat tightened, I excused myself and walked into the hall and breathed the cool courthouse air. One afternoon, the jury came back with a verdict: guilty on multiple counts. Derek's face in the gallery was blank, then spasms of disbelief. He mouthed things I couldn't make out. The judge scheduled sentencing for a later date, and I sat there, not triumphant, but steady. Later, in the sentencing hearing, we listed the damage. The DA argued for a serious sentence. The defense begged for leniency, pointing to Derek's family, his past, his stress. The judge listened, then imposed a sentence that fit the crimes and the harm done: several years behind bars and restitution to be paid back over time. The court gave Derek 7 years. 7 years to think about the choices he'd made, to taste the consequences of his own greed. When the sentence was pronounced, Derek screamed. He screamed at me, at the judge, at the world. But the verdict was final. He'd be taken to a state facility, processed, and put in a place where his freedom would be measured in concrete and routine. Emily collapsed once again when the gavel fell. She begged the judge for mercy for Derek. She begged for him to be spared. I watched her plead and felt something fracture inside me. There's a cruel poetry to watching the person who hurt you beg for leniency for their abuser. After the hearing, she came to me and clung like a child, tears hot on my shirt. She begged me to forgive her. She begged me to forgive Derek. She wanted me to promise that when he came out, we'd all be a family again. I looked at her. I looked at the woman my little girl had become, scarred, shaken, but still there. I wanted to say yes. I wanted the old world back, the one where bedtime stories and scraped knees mattered more than legal filings. But forgiveness isn't about making yourself feel better in the moment. It's about respecting the weight of what happened and knowing what you can live with and what you can't. So I said no. Not in a shout, not with malice. I said it like a man stating an order, calm, final. Emily, I love you. I'll help you pick up the pieces. But I can't forgive what cost us this much. Not now. Her wails tore the courthouse apart. People stared. Some nodded in understanding. Some looked away embarrassed. That night, I slept alone in the living room. It felt right and wrong all at once. A long, soft pause. People ask me sometimes if I regret the way I handled things, if I'd done anything different. Maybe I would have caught it sooner. Maybe I'd have watched harder. Maybe I'd have been less trusting. But regret is a heavy pack to carry, and carrying it won't bring back what we lost. What I do hold on to is the knowledge that I acted the way I thought right. I protected what needed protecting. I gave Emily the chance to tell the truth. I let the law do its job. And when Derek went to prison, 7 years, the judge said, I felt no joy. Just a chill, clean clarity. Justice isn't love, it's consequence. You spend your whole damn life fighting wars outside. And when one shows up inside your own home, it changes the way you breathe. See, on the battlefield, you know who's shooting at you. Back home, you never see it coming. After the trial, things went real quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't give peace, just echoes. Emily moved back into the house for a while. She didn't say much, just floated around like a ghost. Cooked sometimes, cleaned, kept to her room. The sound of her footsteps upstairs used to make me smile. Now it just reminded me of everything I lost. We didn't talk about Derek, not at first. We just coexisted. Two broken people living under one roof, pretending the cracks weren't spreading. One night, I walked past her door and heard her crying. She was whispering his name, Derek, over and over, like a prayer she knew would never be answered. I stood there, hand on the wall, listening. And I swear, it felt like someone was twisting a knife I'd forgotten was still in me. Because no matter what that boy did, my daughter still loved him. And I couldn't hate her for that. Hell, love makes fools out of stronger men than me. A week later, she came to me in the kitchen. She looked smaller somehow, like life had taken a few inches off her soul. Eyes swollen, voice cracked. "Dad," she said, "can I go see him?" The words hit me like a sniper's round. I didn't answer right away. She repeated it, softer this time. "Please, I just need to see him, to know he's okay." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw my little girl again. The same eyes that used to watch me march in parades. The same voice that once asked if monsters were real. And in that moment, I realized the monster wasn't Derek. It was what love and greed had done to her. So I said, "You go see him if you need to, Em, but don't expect him to be the same man you loved." She nodded, and the next morning, she left for the prison. When she came back, she didn't speak for hours. She just sat on the porch, staring into nothing. Her hands were shaking. When I finally asked, she said he didn't apologize, didn't cry, didn't even say her name right. He just told her he'd get even when he got out. That's when I saw it. The light in her eyes flicker out. She realized that the man she was willing to ruin her life for didn't give a damn about her. She started changing after that. Cut her hair short. Got a job in town, volunteering at the Veterans Center. Said she wanted to do something that meant something. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded. Some nights, I'd find her sitting in the backyard, staring at the sky. Once, I joined her. She didn't look at me when she said, "Dad, I wish I could undo it all." And I told her, "Kiddo, you can't undo a wound. You just learn to stop touching it." Time passed. Months turned to a year. We built a routine. Quiet dinners, old movies, sometimes laughter, if we were lucky. But there was always a wall between us. Invisible, cold, heavy. And then came the letter. It was from Derek, from prison. Neat handwriting, full of fake humility. He said he'd found God. Said he'd been thinking about me and Emily. Said he was sorry. That he wanted forgiveness. I read it 3 times. Folded it. Put it in a drawer. Never told Emily. Some things you don't need to poison her with again. Then came another letter. This time addressed to her. She read it in her room. I could hear her sobbing halfway through it. Next day, she came to me, holding it in both hands like it was a piece of glass. "He says he's changed," she whispered. He says he wants to make things right when he's out. I looked at her, and I said, "Baby, snakes shed their skin all the time. Don't mean they turn into something else." She cried, but she nodded, and that was the last time we ever talked about Derek. The day Derek got sentenced to prison, that was justice. But the day Emily stopped defending him, that was peace. You see, forgiveness ain't always about letting someone off the hook. Sometimes it's about cutting the rope they tied around your neck. I didn't forgive him. I didn't visit him, didn't send him nothing. And when they said he'd been transferred to a facility upstate for 7 years, I just said, good. But Emily, she never quite forgave herself. She stayed, worked, helped me. But her laughter never came back the same way. She'd smile, but it was the kind of smile that don't reach your eyes. And every now and then I'd catch her looking at me with that quiet apology, the one she never spoke 'cause she knew I'd already heard it in her silence. People always think revenge feels good, but they're wrong. It don't fix nothing. It just stops the bleeding long enough for you to breathe again. I didn't win. I just survived. It's been 3 years now. Derek's still behind bars. Emily moved out, got her own place near Austin, works with veterans' families. Said she wanted to help daughters like her not lose their fathers. Sometimes she calls, sometimes she don't. But when she does, I answer, always. Because I may never forgive what she did, but she's still my kid. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, don't waste your life waiting for an apology that won't heal you. You can forgive if you choose, or you can just move on. Either way, don't let the war in your heart last longer than the one outside. This is Bob Matthews, and that's my story. If Bob's story hit home for you, subscribe to TaleBoxUS, because sometimes the stories that hurt the most are the ones that teach us who we really are.